presentation on the workforce. The work that we did was on the professional development, again, across 7 countries, in Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Morocco, Oman, Palestine, and Tunisia. Just to give a brief overview on the literature review, the challenges of the early childhood workforce is that they're often underprepared and underqualified. The literature review talks a lot and aligns very well with some of our findings and everything that we have been hearing today from the overall context in the MENA region on the increase in number of children and youth compared to previous years, the humanitarian crisis that is very critical, the changes in the social, educational, and political landscape, from increase in number of working parents, increased awareness on the importance of early childhood, and countries investing more in early childhood. In terms of enrollment, there is high demand, but not enough enrollment. There is big discrepancies in the socioeconomic status across urban and rural areas. There are the cultural taboos about the role of moms in having to care for their kids as opposed to putting them in childcare. Nursery attendance is not obligatory. And there are discrepancies, like I said, between the urban and rural. From the systems level, structures of early childhood, the discrepancies between rural and urban also has implications on oversight and accountability on quality of early childhood, lack of coordination between governing bodies, lack of pedagogical support, as we previously heard, and lack of data collection mechanisms. In terms of early childhood workforce, they're predominantly females, and we have seen this as well. There's the difference in the private and the public sector, and then challenges in the early childhood professional development. The lack of coordination across different entities, no sustainable plans for professional development, insufficient PD, and lack of accountability, etc. So all that to put some scope into how we approached the work on professional development, we adopted a definition on professional development, which is facilitated teaching and learning experiences that are transactional and designed to support the acquisition of professional knowledge, skills and dispositions, as well as application in practice. So it's not just taking the sessions, but actually acquiring skills and implementing. And we also looked at a couple of frameworks to know or to help with our scoping review of the literature to see what effectiveness of professional development really means and what kinds of literature there is out there to give us a sense of what effective PD means. So these are some of the frameworks that we looked at and that helped us identify research on effectiveness of professional development. Okay, so these were the research questions that were set with the team, and accordingly we used a mixed methods approach. We did both a scoping research and we did interviews and surveys. So the scoping review is another approach that we took in order to be able to identify the research. Remember, I mentioned the effectiveness of PD. So we were really trying to find documents that talk about effective professional development. So we put some inclusion criteria in terms of the year, the language, the types of documents, where they're published, our target audience, and the focus, which was, like I said earlier, effectiveness of PD. So we identified 300 documents that are addressing all sorts of things, and to be able to eliminate to our inclusion criteria, we came up with 8 articles. And the findings from the 3 key findings from the scoping work was that active participation is a big element of effective professional development. Reflective practice is another, and constructive ongoing feedback is another. So it's not just doing a professional development session, but rather having these informal professional development happening continuously. Muhammad, what's the time situation? Because I always, I have 5 minutes left? 10. Okay, so for the surveys and the خلاص, now for the surveys and the interviews, our colleague previously mentioned that the data that was coming in from the different countries varied. From some countries we got more data, other countries not. There were minimum requirements, so we were able to get some of those and some not. These were our research teams in the countries, which I think you're all familiar with. We gave 2 surveys for teachers and for principals, and we did some focus group discussions. The total number of participants were 2,475 teachers and 973 principals from both nursery and kindergarten and public, private, and subsidized schools. Okay, and for the focus groups, there were 15 FGDs that were done, with 82 teachers in total participating and 52 principals and supervisors. Okay, very quickly, some of the data that are presented here are data that had significant results, okay? So they're just snippets of some of the information that we got from all this data. We already mentioned that the data showed that there was a predominantly female workforce between the ages of 20 to 40. In countries, it varies in terms of who's working in the private sector and who's working in the public sector. For principals, also overwhelmingly female, but you will notice here in Jordan, in Lebanon, and in Oman, they're all females. The principals are all females. I thought that was very interesting. Okay, so for the second question, I didn't even read you the questions, but the idea is what kinds of professional development the teachers and principals are doing. Workshops was found to be the most common. And by the way, the data all exists, so I'm just highlighting some of these things. Attendance of conferences was low in all countries as a form of professional development. Engagement with peers was practiced widely. And then the collaborative research was done, just seen mostly in Lebanon and Morocco, and then networking with teachers was not that great. In terms of differences by country, school types, and teaching, we can see that more often we're going to find that private schools seem to engage in formal and informal professional development more than the public and the subsidized schools. And across the board, nursery school teachers are less formally prepared for their profession as opposed to their kindergarten counterparts. Okay? So this was found across the board, even with principals, in terms of what they find interesting and important as topics of professional development. So I'll just go over these quickly. In terms of what the principals wanted to have professional development in, learning through play was a very common one. New methods of teaching and learning as well. Mental health of teachers was to a lower extent, especially amongst KG teachers, as opposed to nursery teachers. So teachers of nursery class teachers were seeking more mental health types of professional development than the kindergarten teachers and principals. And teamwork was also emphasized in some countries versus others. This is a distribution of how much principals participated in professional development. So you can see that there's a majority that is participating. These are for the principals in terms of the types of topics that they are interested in. I'm still going to go, okay? Hold on. In terms of informal professional development activities, private schools showed significantly higher participation in informal professional development, like planning together, collaborating together, and so forth. In public schools, it was lower than the rest of their counterparts in terms of the informal types of professional development. And in subsidized schools, there was a significantly higher participation in observing and mentoring one another. Okay? In terms of the third question, which is the correlation between how much principals and teachers perceive professional development to be important, there was a weak negative correlation between high engagement in professional development and self-reported improvement. So they do take professional development, but they don't report themselves as improving in their quality of teaching and learning. There is a lot of emphasis on the quality of the types of professional development that they get. And it was interesting to find that the less experienced and younger teachers perceive professional development as more important than their older ones, and they consider them to be more impactful. All right, so there is a general agreement that professional development is important. Nursery level leaders perceive a stronger alignment between professional development and the alignment with students' objectives more than their KG counterparts. And the last two questions were more the qualitative, so the the focus group discussions. The fourth question asked, what are the early childhood barriers to accessing professional development activities? Lack of policies, lack of systematic planning within early childhood institutions, and then the poor working conditions, which we already heard. And then what are some of the gaps and priority areas for early childhood workforce for professional development provision? The need is for continuous professional development, for systematic planning and organizing and coordination with the leaders, with the different types of institutions, prioritizing classroom visits, which is the ongoing informal type of professional development, less theory, more practical stuff, and improving working conditions, which we just heard to be the ultimate barrier. And then one of the interesting things, again, as I pass, my 10-minute or 5-minute time, there were lots of, in the reports, in the country reports, there were lots of opportunities that we found as entry points to build on the early childhood advocacy and the work on early childhood. So you have in Tunisia, for example, they're expanding their already existing policies and issuing new ones. They're increasing their public investments through the different types of initiatives that they have started here. In Jordan, in order to address the fragmentation of the education sector, there are decrees that are being published and coordination that's happening. And in Oman, the Ministry of Education is recruiting specialized graduates to enroll them to the comprehensive training programs to acquire professional skills, and these are to improve the quality of the recruited teachers of the early childhood workforce.